Appreciate everybody coming out today. I'm Bill Aker, Senior Planner with the Land to Sky Regional Council here in Asheville, and I serve as a coordinator of the Regional Clean Air Campaign and also the coordinator of the Land to Sky Clean Vehicles Coalition. Today we are kicking off the ozone pollution forecasting season with this workshop and press conference. State-issued air quality forecast for ground level pollution levels will begin today for April 1st, and these forecasts can be accessed by logging onto the North Carolina Air Awareness website, and you can also get them through media outlets. And Paul Muller with the State Division of Air Quality is here today, and he'll give us more details about these forecasts during his presentation in a few minutes. So as you know, air quality has been an issue in our region for several decades. Air pollution can impact our health, our environment, and also our economy. So we must take proactive measures to minimize these impacts. And our region is growing. This growth is resulting in more cars and trucks on our highways, more homes and buildings to heat and cool, not to mention all the lawnmowers, weed eaters and blowers, and everything else that emits. So to keep up with this growth, we must take action to reduce our energy consumption, we must find cleaner sources of power, and reduce emissions from our vehicles and equipment. And the good news is that action is being taken by many groups in our region to address this problem, and today you're going to hear about some of those programs. So at this time, I would like to recognize our event sponsors. With the Western North Carolina Regional Air Quality Agency, Ashley Featherstone, Betsy Brown, and James Rayford. And with the North Carolina Division of Air Quality, Paul Muller and Keith Bamberger. With the Land to Sky Clean Vehicles Coalition, Chris Dobbins, our fleet consultant. And Duke Energy, who has been a supporter of our clean air campaign since we started in 1998. Jason Walls, district manager. And you'll be hearing from most of these folks in a few minutes. I also want to thank Buncombe County TV for coming out today to tape the entire event and to conduct some interviews. And that information will be on their website in the coming weeks, so look for that. I also want to thank the media for coming out today and covering this event. We can't educate the public and decision makers in our community without help from the media, so thank you all for coming. So at this time, I would like to do some introductions in the audience, and I realize I forgot one of our staff members with one of our sponsors, Shannon Culpepper, and I'm introducing her as she takes a bite of something. So Shannon, thanks for being here. Mayor, would you introduce yourself, please?
Mayor Barbara Volk, City of Hendersonville.
Okay. And Jim?
Jim Renfro, Air Quality Specialist at Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Okay, Rachel? Rachel?
I'm Rachel Lodge, I'm the Environmental Programs Coordinator for Henderson.
Okay, Linda?
Linda Geltz, former regional planner here at Land to Sky Regional Council, and working on some idle reduction and miscellaneous issues with Bill.
Robin?
I'm Robin Ramsey, and I'm the Central Reverse Office, and I'm here to learn.
Okay, Betsy and James. And with the media?
David Warren with the Asheville Citizen-Times.
Okay, Max?
Max Hager, Buncombe County TV.
Okay, is it Steve? Okay, thank you all so much for coming out. All right. Well, at this time, I'll introduce Paul Muller. Paul is a regional supervisor of the Asheville Regional Office with the North Carolina Division of Air Quality and one of our region's air quality experts. And he'll be addressing air quality issues kind of at the state and federal level. And Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. And today is the beginning of the ozone forecasting season for this year. The ozone monitoring season runs from April 1st through the end of October. The forecast season runs through the end of September. And they are issued each day about 3 o'clock. So if you are interested in going hiking tomorrow, you may want to be checking our air quality forecast. Make sure the air is green or at least yellow to make sure that your hike is enjoyable and healthy. We do it by a color code, an air quality index. And this is our index. Green is implying that it's good air quality is forecast for tomorrow. Yellow is moderate, And when you get to the orange level, and these are tied in the end, as I'll show you, to our ambient air quality standards, it is beginning to be unhealthy for sensitive groups, and by that we mean people who may have emphysema or any other breathing difficulty. So depending on your health condition and your activities that you plan, you can check our forecasts and determine if the next day is going to be pretty good air quality or not. With respect to ozone, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for ozone is 75 parts per billion. So it's green as long as it's going to remain below 60. So that's not even up to the standard yet. Between 60 and then up to the standard of 75, we call that the yellow air quality index. And then orange is when we start to get over that standard. And last year we did not get over the standard in North Carolina, so that was good at any of our sites for the end of the year determination. We appreciate that, and we hope for another good year. We also issue a forecast for fine particles, PM 2.5, particulate matter less than 2.5 microns in diameter. And that is also tied to a standard. Our annual standard for fine particles is 12 micrograms per cubic meter. And so our green level is below 12. If it stays below our annual standard, we consider that green. But there is also a daily standard, 24-hour standard, which is 35 micrograms per cubic meter. As long as we're staying below that, we call that the yellow stage. When we get over that 24-hour standard, that's when we enter the orange range there. And so you can see the forecast if you go to our website. This is ncr.org. And right here, you can see our air quality forecast spot. You click on that button. And this is the page that shows you the areas of the state in which forecasts are issued and what the color is for each of those areas. You can see over here that we have the ozone AQI. I did this one on this past Friday, so we weren't measuring ozone yet. There was not a forecast yet. Today will be the first. The forecast, though, for PM 2.5 that day, all green, was good everywhere across the state. We like those kind. Now that we're doing the ozone, though, we have also, in addition to the counties here where we do fine particles as well, we have a ridgetop forecast. So we do a forecast both for ridgetops and for valleys. And here you'll be able to read what the actual ridgetop forecast is for ozone, and here it will show the valley forecast for ozone, and that's set right there. So if you plan to hike at Mount Mitchell, you'll want to check the ridgetops. If you're going to be hiking along the beautiful river here in Asheville, then you can check the valley forecast. And to get the forecast, if you'd like, you can sign up to receive an email that comes every day in the afternoon. It tells you what the forecast is for the next day. You can also go to a variety of, like the newspapers, the local TV station, and EPA. The Weather Channel carries it as well. So there are a variety of places where you can access that forecast. And if you would like to not only know what the forecast is for tomorrow, but be able to see more real-time data, what currently is going on, that is available as well. And if you go to our website, you can access that. Up here in this corner, you can click on air monitoring. When you do that, this menu drops down, and you can choose different items to look at. But we can look at current data by site or current data by monitor. And so if you click on current data by site, it would take you to this map. You could then click on any part of the state you want to look at, and it will show you the monitoring sites in that area and the most recent available data. So if you're getting ready some morning to go out for a hike, maybe you want to go to Smoky Mountain National Park. But you can see then at that point what the forecast is in that area. So it's how we're trying to do a forecast. We're also trying to give you current data, and hopefully that is of some value to folks as you are preparing your activities this summer. But then to look a little more toward the past, I want to review the data that we've assembled over the last several years. And fortunately, it shows improvement. We are definitely seeing an improvement in air quality, both with respect to ozone and fine particles. And these are the monitoring sites in western North Carolina for ozone. We have 4 valley sites, and we have 4 ridgetop sites. The ridgetop sites are above 4,500 feet in elevation. And once again, the current standard is 75 parts per billion. Well, we're doing well, especially our valley sites. Bryson City is even below 60. So that's a significant improvement over time. This is for the data from 2012 through 14. And the way we do it is at every site, we look at 8-hour periods of time throughout every day. We then pick the fourth highest 8-hour period throughout the season, and that becomes the statistic we use for that year. We do that each year for in 2012, 13, 14, and average those three numbers, and that's how we get at this. You can see that our ridgetop sites are reading higher than our valley sites. What's interesting, though, is that the profile is different. At our valley sites, usually ozone goes up in the afternoon. It's formed due to the energy from the sun causing reactions in the atmosphere that involve nitrogen oxides to form ozone. But our ridgetop sites often see their highest concentrations at night. It's due to the wonderful concept of the boundary layer, trapping ozone above that boundary layer, but the peaks are still above the boundary layer as well. So we often see the concentrations at the highest up there at night. And unless you are out hiking at Mount Mitchell in the middle of the night, hopefully that won't be as big a problem, but that is one of the things that we do see. But here it shows the progress over time, the changes in improvement in the ozone concentrations in western North Carolina. If you come over to here, you can see that we're looking at 1998 through 2000, that 3-year period there. And we have a wonderful overall downward slope in that line because we are getting cleaner air, cleaner ozone, reduced ozone concentrations. The lowest point here is this is the 2012 through 14 data right here. So we're glad to see that, and it shows improvement in our air quality with respect to ozone. Both at our higher elevations and in our valley sites, though. They've been improving in both places. But to go from back here, when we actually had some sites that were in the 90 to 95 range, and now we're down in this 65 to 70 range. That's great. We appreciate that. We hope it continues. And one of the ways we try to keep it continuing and improving is by reducing nitrogen oxide emissions. That's the key pollutant that we control to reduce ozone. Ozone's a reaction in the atmosphere, of course, that ends up with the O3 molecule formed. That's what ozone is. But by controlling NOx, we can control that formation process. And the VOCs are also involved, but we have a lot of VOCs in here because that comes from vegetation. But to show the improvements that we have seen and the changes we have seen over the 10-year period from 2002 to 2012, back in 2002, the statewide, now this is North Carolina statewide total, was almost 600,000 tons of NOx emitted statewide. And you can see that our on-road vehicles were a little over 40%, just under 20% for off-road vehicles, and then here, power plants, electric generating units, were 27%. So at that time, we were looking at all of those sources of NOx to reduce. And fortunately, they have. Now in 2012, we were down to 366,000 tons statewide, but the percentages have changed. Certainly the power plants, they dropped by 1/2 as their slice of the pie. On-road vehicles, though, have increased as in respect to that. And if you look at on-road and off-road vehicles here together, they're about 3/4 of the source of NOx now. So as we go forward, we may still be able to see some reduction in power plants, especially as we go to cleaner fuels and find other ways of generating power besides burning coal. But we'll have to continue to see improvement in our vehicles through fleet turnover and the onset incoming vehicles being cleaner all the time. EPA often tightens up the standards for new vehicles, and then we benefit from that over time. But we still have seen a significant reduction in this overall emissions rate, which is helpful. And a new standard from EPA is coming. Our current standard of 75 parts per billion is our national standard for ozone. it's going to be reduced probably to 65 or 70 parts per billion. It's going to happen later this year. And these are the dates we're looking at. By October 1st, they'll nail down what number we're going to go to from now on. That will be our new point of comparison for our monitoring data. By the following year, we will have to make recommendations to EPA in what areas in our state are meeting or are failing to meet that new standard. As we follow up with that then, EPA will eventually designate areas as attainment or non-attainment, and then set up a program for by what time the non-attainment areas need to improve and achieve the new standard once it's set. But it extends out into the future, and hopefully as we go along, we'll continue to see real improvements in our vehicles and our emission rates. To look at fine particles then, which is our other concern, fine particles are primarily formed in the atmosphere from the SO2 emissions, sulfur dioxide gas. And health studies, though, show a correlation between our fine particle concentrations and the mortality rate. Death rate goes up as concentration of fine particles goes up. And our current standard is 12. It was 15 for a number of years, and a few years ago it was reduced to 12, but we are doing well across western North Carolina. These are the monitoring sites that we have. And we are in that 8 to 9 range on all our sites and showing improvement over time, fortunately. We don't have all of the 2014 data in yet, so these are the numbers from 2011 through 13, and I think they'll continue to show improvement as we look at 2012 through 14. But over time, as you can see here, this is 99 through 01 data. We have continued to show an overall significant improvement. And this is really because of putting scrubbers on power plants that burn coal. That's really where that improvement came from. And it's great to see that downward slope. I hope we continue to do that. We will hopefully see alternatives to coal as well. That's one of the things that would hopefully even reduce SO2 emissions more in the future, and therefore the fine particle concentrations. And as we move along, we are also, though, going to be looking at sulfur dioxide gas. When SO2 is emitted as a gas in the atmosphere and goes through that change in the atmosphere, it becomes a particle. That's what we measure as fine particles. We can do that through monitors which are measuring particulates, but now we are also interested in SO2 as a gas before it converts into a particle in its gaseous phase, and we're starting to monitor for that as well. There's a new 1-hour standard. Our ozone standard is looking at 8-hour periods of time. With fine particles, we look at usually an annual standard, but this one is for a 1-hour standard, and to try to determine compliance with that new 1-hour standard of 75 parts per billion, we'll be looking at either modeling or at monitoring, depending on which is available and which is doable at a particular site. Because we're not looking at just everywhere, we're not going to do ambient monitoring here, we are targeting certain sources of sulfur dioxide. And it's going to be implemented over the next 3 years. But the one site that we are definitely looking at here that EPA designated is Blue Ridge Paper. And so they will either be doing some modeling or setting up a monitoring system there. Either they have to have modeling submitted or they need to begin operation of a monitoring system for SO2 there by January 1st of 2017. That's our timeline for that one. And in response to that, Blue Ridge Paper is planning additional use of natural gas in lieu of coal as an energy source at their plant. They're in the planning stages for that, and you may have read the press release that occurred in December, where they received a JMAC grant, that's Job Maintenance and Capital Development Fund money. They received $12 million from the state for that, and it's to be used toward that conversion from coal to natural gas that will result in reducing the emissions of SO2. It will also, fortunately, result in some reduction in their NOx emissions. And their initial forecasting was, or looking at this project, they'll be putting in about $51 million to go along with the 12 they got from the state. So that is the next one going on, but it's for SO2 gas, which is not one we've really monitored for before. This is a new rule that came from EPA. I also wanted to just touch on a couple items that have changed in our open burning rules, just so you're aware of them. The legislature made some changes in the past sessions of the past couple of meetings in Raleigh, where they have now allowed the burning of stumps. In the past, it was always okay to burn vegetation. You couldn't burn anything that didn't grow on property, but and it's still illegal to burn trash. But in the past, we did not allow the burning of stumps. It was only the burning of limbs and leaves and things like that. But that has now been changed, and so if you see your neighbor doing that, please be aware that it is now acceptable under our rules. And it's also legal now to move vegetation from one site to another. It used to be the requirement that you burned it where it grew, but not anymore. 4 times a year you are allowed to transport vegetation to another site and burn it there. The one other change that has occurred is that we used to require a 1,000-foot buffer zone between a burn pile and any occupied structure on the property adjacent to it. That has now been reduced to 500 feet. So those are the changes that have occurred in our rules. And, hope to bring you up to speed on that. One of the things you can still do, though, to help in this entire process is to be energy efficient. Try to keep the air conditioning at a comfortable level, but no lower than comfort level. Insulating your home, that's something I did a couple of years ago, and it made a huge difference. It was great spraying this foam in my attic. You can sign up for green power and support some alternative sources of generating power. And clean vehicles, that's one of the main ways we can help in the future as we get cleaner vehicles coming in. So if you would like to go to our website again to check on more of this information, you're more than welcome. And if you want to contact me, that's how you do it. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Paul? What's up?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for being here for our annual Ozone Kickoff event. I'm going to start out with some basic information about the agency, show you some similar data from our monitoring sites with some trends over time similar to Paul, and also have some additional information about some of the voluntary initiatives that we're working on, in addition to those regulatory initiatives. See if I can go the right way here. The Western North Carolina Regional Air Quality Agency is a local air pollution control program. We're one of 3 local programs here in North Carolina. The other 2 are in Forsyth County and Mecklenburg County. And the Clean Air Act allows local governments to have their own local regulatory programs for air quality, as long as those programs are at least as stringent as the states that they operate within. So we basically do pretty much the same thing the State Division of Air Quality does here in our area. We run the air pollution monitoring sites in our area. We are responsible for permitting and enforcing all the federal, state, and local air pollution regulations. So we have a permitting and inspections program. We also handle asbestos removal, demolition permits inside Buncombe County in the city of Asheville. We do enforce the open burning regulations that Paul spoke about. And we also have some air awareness type programs as well. So here in the mountains, we do have some unique conditions due to our topography. We get temperature inversions that have to do with the mountain valley dynamic there. And so we do experience issues with locally generated pollution when we are experiencing inversions, especially this happens at nighttime with cold weather. Sometimes the pollution gets trapped down low near the ground, and any kind of locally generated pollution like burning or other emissions can be an issue. And it does concern us as well when you look at open burning and the setback requirements and some of those other things that Paul mentioned. We do get a lot of issues with that here in the mountains that might not be as much of an issue down east. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. But here in Western North Carolina, we've traditionally been concerned with the ozone levels and the fine particles that we've been talking about this morning. Paul's already gone over the sources there, but again, with ozone, we try to reduce nitrogen oxides, and those are mainly associated with cars and trucks, the power plant, other large industrial sources of combustion. And as Paul said, it used to be that the power plants were a more significant slice of that pie, and now that they've put on controls for NOx to reduce their emissions, it's really cars and trucks and other mobile sources that are our main sources of pollution there. And EPA has continued to address those at the national level by making cleaner engine requirements and cleaner fuels. With the fine particles, we have also seen great reductions in those. Most of those are sulfates, nitrates from combustion, which have been greatly reduced, as Paul said, with the scrubbers being put on the power plants in North Carolina. And so the other thing is visibility. And what we have found is that the fine particles are very closely related to the visibility issues. And Jim Renfro, of course, is here, and he's much more knowledgeable about this than I am. But when the little particles in the air attach to, like, say, for instance, a water vapor molecule with a high humidity in the summer, they expand and grow and scatter light more efficiently. So that's why in the summertime, often you would have noticed more so in the past that it's hard to see sometimes the mountain vista, say from Asheville. You might not be able to see Mount Pisgah, or it might be, you can see that haze in the air. And the fine particles are really there all year round, but we see their effects more in the summer with the interaction with humidity. And of course, that's very important to us with our tourism industry. People come up here and they want to have clean mountain air and see nice views. So we've seen great improvements in visibility in the parks, and so we're very, very pleased with that. Here's just a basic graph. This is a Bent Creek monitor, and you can see, similar to the state data that Paul showed earlier, that we've got a great downward trend these last few years. We're now right around 64 parts per billion for our design value compared to the standard of 75. Of course, that's going to be lowered to down around 65 or 70. So what we find is, as EPA does more studies, they find that the standards need to be tightened more to protect public health with an adequate margin of safety. So there's always more work to be done. And this is our fine particle levels over time. You can see we have a great reduction here ever since around 2006 or so was when the scrubbers were being put on the power plants in North Carolina. And in addition to that, around the 2006-2007 timeframe, they also implemented lower sulfur diesel fuel, and that affects emissions from the trucks. We also have cleaner standards that the big heavy-duty diesel vehicles have to meet after 2007. So all of that seems to be coming into play here, and as Paul mentioned, when the fleets turn over, we continue to see improvements. And while North Carolina was first in the southeast to require scrubbers and other controls on power plants, EPA federal requirements are resulting in more and more scrubbers and other controls on power plants in surrounding states like Tennessee and South Carolina, and basically all the surrounding states in the southeast. So we're expecting that we're going to see more improvements from that as well. This is just our basic air quality index data. You've got the forecasts that you get every day, and then this is actually based on the actual levels that were measured. The air quality forecast predicts what the air quality index will be for the following day, and then our monitoring data is what's used here to show. And you can see that we don't have all the data in yet for 2014, but the majority of the time our air quality is in the good category, and then we do have some moderate days as well. And this will change somewhat, and it does change over time. Whenever EPA issues a new standard, we might see that the standard is harder to meet. We might have less green days and more yellow days, and even an orange day. You can see we didn't have any orange days these last couple of years. So we try to get the message out to people that just because we have more yellow days, yes, we do need to be concerned. It doesn't necessarily mean that air quality is getting worse. It's just that this is based on the standard, which continues to be a moving target for us. So now I thought I'd switch gears and just briefly tell you about some of the other initiatives. EPA has issued some rules called generally available control technology that are applicable to what we call area sources. Things like gas stations don't have a lot of emissions, but they do emit benzene, which is a carcinogen. And when you think about all of the gas stations that are out there, that collectively adds up. So EPA has issued some standards to address urban air toxics, as they call it, pollutants like that, and these smaller sources. And
So just a little bit of background, although most folks in here know. The Division of Air Quality is a part of North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources. We're tasked with protecting and improving outdoor or ambient air quality. We're the lead agency enforcing federal laws and regulations, and we have a network of monitors across the state to monitor air pollutants. I, however, work in the outreach and education group called NC Air Awareness. So we do a lot of outreach and education to students, general public, teachers, businesses, on a variety of topics, including no idling, open burning, how air pollution affects their health, the air quality code, and things they can do to reduce their contribution. While we reach hundreds of thousands of these folks every year, we haven't had a focused outreach campaign to older adults. And older adults are defined by the EPA as a sensitive group to air pollution. So if you see on the board over there in in orange, unhealthy for sensitive groups, older adults are one of those sensitive groups. They're usually sensitive because of pre-existing health conditions. And the older adult population in North Carolina is continuing to grow. These are some statistics for the United States, some basic statistics. The Older Americans Act defines older adults as 65 and older, just so you know, but you'll see older adult defined differently in a lot of places. There's been an 18% increase in the population since 2000, and a lot of that is due to the baby boomers aging into that age range. You can see even in the 65 to 74 age, older adults are also very active still and outdoors. And so the population in North Carolina ranks us 9th in the states. And across the United States, the older adult population is continuing to be larger than the 0 to 17 range. And the same is true in North Carolina. So this is a map from data from 2012 that shows there's 59 counties with more older adults than children. In a decade, in 2025, it's projected to be 89 counties. So out of 100, 89 will have more older adults than children. So this combined with their designation as a sensitive group is why we wanted to have a focused outreach effort. So the name of the campaign is Know the Code. My slides are out of order. That's okay. So we'll talk about some of the health effects. I am not a doctor, so these are the basics of what I've learned from speaking with professionals. But some of the symptoms of air pollution that affect your lungs are cough, a prolonged or persistent cough, wheezing, shortness of breath, and continuous aggravation of asthma. So these are some of the possible health effects. The diagram here shows two of them, which is this increase in white blood cells and this mucus buildup in the airway lining. And so then these are some of the health effects on your heart. And some of the associated symptoms are chest congestion, chest pain, irregular heartbeat, and shortness of breath. You can see in this diagram that when plaque builds up, what it looks like compared to what a normal artery would look like. So Paul and Ashley already went over this, so we'll just breeze through. This is the air quality forecast, and this will be sort of the cornerstone of our campaign, which is why it's called Know the Code. We want them to be able to recognize the code, get in the habit of using it every day, just like you check the weather, to check the code before you go outside. So how do you get the forecast? They already went over this a little bit too, but EPA's airnow.gov, you can type in your zip code, get your exact forecast. You can do the same at the Division of Air Quality. And we also have a 1-800 toll-free number. And then EnviroFlash is what Paul mentioned, that you can get an email sent to your inbox, and you can get that daily, or you can choose If you just want to get it notified at an orange level, then you can just get those days. And then we have an app. So we're not recommending to older adults just to stay inside and not do anything, but there's simple steps you can take to protect your health. If you're going to go outdoors, you just want to check the code before you go, basically. Ozone pollution tends to be the highest during the hottest part of the day. So just like they tell you during a hot season, you don't want to go out in the middle of the day, you want to go out in the morning or the evening. And then if you are doing strenuous activity on a air quality day or a high air pollution day, then you would want to just reduce that activity. So if you were normally a runner, maybe you would want to walk that day. And then of course, check the air quality code. So the campaign itself, these are our goals and objectives. As I mentioned, we want to focus on our older adults using the air quality forecast code. Some of our objectives are to reach older adults who are 55 and older. Even though older Americans define them as 65 and older, we wanted to skew it a little bit younger to catch more of the active older adults, but also get people into a habit of checking the code and getting used to doing it. So while they might not have a health problem that is affecting them now, maybe in the future they will, and they've already gotten in the habit of checking the code. We also want to do direct outreach, which is outreach and education, and then indirect outreach, which is making partnerships. So some examples of this partnership so far, these are the statewide level ones. If you're not familiar, the North Carolina Senior Games, which apparently is on there twice, is like the Olympics, but for older adults. So they're 50 and older, and they are part of our target audience. They're outside all the time, active, exercising. So we worked with them last year at their statewide finals and gave out materials. So we're hoping to work with more of the local events. All 100 counties have some kind of local event to work with the participants who are outside. And then locally, I came to a clean air campaign meeting, and out of that was able to get invited to the Successful Aging Conference that's going to be here in May. So I'll be giving a presentation there to a group of older adults. And then we're working on some regional mini conferences, and I'm going to try and do them across the state, but the first one is going to be here in May, hopefully. And we've been working with Land of Sky to do that. And then direct outreach, which is free, because we work for the state, so everything is free. We have some informational cards, brochures, pamphlets, and I have examples of those on the tables. If you want any, I also brought a couple hundred, and I can give you some if you have any people you want to give them to. And then we can offer presentations in a variety of forms, and then I'm also working on a sort of do-it-yourself presentation, so something I could send to someone if they wanted to give it to a group of older adults. So these are just some examples of the materials that you'll find in the back. This is the info card, and part of the campaign wants to focus on the toll-free number. We usually focus on the app or EnviroFlash, but we feel like with this type of audience, we want to use the toll-free number as an emphasis because it might be easier for them to call. So then on the back of the card, it just has the code. So we envision that they would just hang this on their fridge, and so if they called the number and they said it's an orange day, they can say, what does that mean again? And then they can look. Eventually they'll know what it means, but until then. And then a few simple steps. And then this is just a couple more, some promotional items on the right. It's a bookmark and a magnet. And then that poster, which I have one example of, is a 2x3 health poster that somebody could hang in a senior center or senior living center or congregate nutrition site for their folks to look at. So, any questions about Know the Code?
Any questions for Shannon? Okay, thank you, Shannon.
No problem, thank you.
I'm excited to talk a little bit about, if you remember Paul's diagram, his circle chart there that had the electric generating units and then the change over time. And so I get the opportunity to focus on just one of those slices of that pie, and it's one of the slices that we're very happy to see such significant reduction in over time, and we continue to be a grateful partner and continue to see good advancements and reductions in the amount of air emissions from our power plant.
So big picture, our commitment to North Carolina has really been unchanged for many, many years, is to provide affordable, reliable, and increasingly clean electricity to all of our customers across the state. Following the merger with Progress Energy, the company actually serves customers in 83 of North Carolina's 100 counties. And so our ability to continue to make investments in clean energy are really statewide and in a lot of ways across 7 states in the United States. But I just want to jump right into it instead of giving you a lot of background because, to me, to the company, what really made the most significant impact on air quality dates back to 2002. And many of you in this room may have been a part of that or very engaged in that process. But in 2002, there was a piece of landmark legislation that was passed in North Carolina, and North Carolina really leading the way when it comes to states to implement such standards. But it really included a broad base of support across the state from electric utilities to the environmental community, state lawmakers on both Republican and Democrat side of the aisle, as well as state agencies and businesses to really put together a plan on how we were going to reduce air emissions in North Carolina. And so in 2002, the Clean Smokestacks Act was passed, and it really brought about the most stringent air standards for coal-fired power plants across the state, and it significantly reduced the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides emission, which are the main causes of acid rain and smog. So the goals of that plan, and I always like to start with the goals. So the goals of that plan were nitrogen oxide reduction greater than 77%, and sulfur dioxide reductions greater than 73%. And so, as companies thought about how we were going to meet those new very stringent standards that had not been in place before then, there were a lot of different ways to do it. But it really, that moment in time launched both Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress's modernization efforts of its coal-fired power plants across North Carolina. And so how did we do that? We really did it through three ways: retirements, retrofits, and replacements of new power plants. There's a number on this slide that I have to update in a second because in my efforts to do this quickly, I put it in the wrong place. But we'll get there in a minute. So from a retirement perspective, we recognize that not every coal-fired power plant is the same. It's not the same in efficiency. It's not the same in how much electricity it provides. There are a lot of factors that go into whether or not it makes sense economically to put a scrubber or make these large investments in air emissions. And so we quickly realized that there were some power plants in North Carolina that the best thing to do to help achieve these goals was to simply retire the power plant. And so we have now retired all coal-fired power plants not outfitted with advanced emission controls in North Carolina that are operated by Duke Energy or its predecessor companies. And so that's a big deal. That's a significant both investment and it's also a significant advantage to improvements in air emissions. So retrofits, this is where we're going to change the number. So the $7 billion is the total we've invested in North Carolina to modernize our system. But just in retrofits alone, we've invested over $1 billion in advanced emission controls here in the Carolinas. Of that $1 billion, $300 million were specific to the Asheville power plant itself. So when we think about the investments that we have made here locally, not just globally across the state, we've invested $300 million at the Asheville plants to help improve the air emissions at that station. And the other thing we've had to do is, so when you retire a lot of electric generation, I can assure you we haven't reduced the amount of electricity we need since 2002, and so we had to replace those power plants. And we've replaced those with primarily with natural gas. And so natural gas still has an emissions profile. It's much lower than coal, but it does have an emissions profile. But with the replacement of with retirement of our older, less efficient coal-fired power plants and replacing them with new, high-efficiency natural gas-fired power plants, we've continued to see significant reductions, not just locally, but across North Carolina in SOx, NOx, as well as carbon. So there is no commercially viable technology to put on the back end of a coal-fired power plant to reduce its carbon output. The only way to do that is to reduce how much coal you burn today. But with the replacement of our coal-fired power plants with natural gas that emit far less carbon than a coal-fired power plant, we've actually seen an overall reduction in carbon emissions in North Carolina by about 20% when you take the things into consideration of new power plants, coal plant retirements, nuclear uprates, energy efficiency improvements, the continued growth and expansion of solar in North Carolina. We've been able to achieve between 2005 and 2014 about a 20% overall reduction in carbon emissions, which is significant. So let's talk specifically about the Asheville plant. I like to, the last few years that I've done this, I like to bring in this chart because it helps kind of talk about the progress along the way, not just what we've achieved to date, but are we continuing to maintain that? And so if you look back here in 2002, which is when the landmark legislation was passed, and you can very clearly see when the scrubber came online for SO2 removal, as well as some of the NOx controls. And so that $300 million that I mentioned in one of the previous slides was invested in this period of time. And so what that has resulted in is significant declines in both sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Total about 92% of SO2 and 81% of NOx. And if you'll remember, the goals were greater than 77 and 73, and we've achieved 92 and 81. And so those investments have made a big difference in the amount of those constituents being emitted from the Asheville plant. So one of the questions I routinely get about our local power plant here is carbon emissions. So last year I actually showed a chart, and I was unable to get the data quickly this year, that showed that we have seen, if you compare 2005 to 2014, a 49% decrease in carbon emissions from the Asheville plant. And Paul, before you write that down, I got to qualify. So I went back and asked some questions about it. And I asked the question of, that doesn't make sense to me because there's no commercially viable technology that reduces carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants. And so that really has to do with post-merger. So after the merger between Duke Energy and Progress Energy, you may remember us talking about increased fuel savings for customers. Okay? Well, what that means is because we're now one company, we have been able to dispatch our power plants in a different way. Going back to the statement I made a few minutes ago, the only way to really see reductions in carbon is to operate coal-fired power plants less. And so that 49% was a little bit misleading because it was taking an operational change of about 2 years comparing it to a different time. So we have seen reductions in carbon overall. And so that I use that statewide 20% number because that's what we're really have been able to achieve by operating power plants differently, dispatching natural gas in front of coal in a lot of instances, nuclear uprates, so getting more nuclear capacity. The growth in solar and energy efficiency have really been the leading causes in carbon reductions. So when you compare year to year, in 2013 was a year where we had a really, really long outage to make a significant repair, or to do some significant maintenance at the Asheville plant, which is why that 49% was in there, because we had a long outage, we weren't operating it as much. So I didn't want to really provide false data, and I wanted to talk more about the 20% across the state. So, something else that we're really proud of, and I put this in here as a segue into Bill, because I didn't do this last year, and I took it back as a lesson learned that if I go right in front of Bill, I'm going to do an electric vehicle segue, right? And so the company has been a very proud supporter of the growth of the electric vehicle industry in North Carolina. And so went back and looked at a little bit of research, and EPRI estimates about 3,800 plug-in electric vehicles sold just in the state of North Carolina since introduction in 2011. Over 0.5% of car sales in Buncombe County in 2014 were plug-in electric vehicles. That number seemed really low to me until somebody put it kind of in better context. That's actually a pretty good increase if you look across the state. The Buncombe County still seems to be maybe not leading the way in North Carolina, but has made significant investments and improvement in people buying plug-in electric vehicles. So the company, Duke Energy, has deployed over 600 charging stations through customer pilots, whether they're at homes, businesses, or other things. But we're trying to continue to support the electric vehicle infrastructure because we know the importance of supporting that infrastructure as you see a growth in that technology. And we continue to invest and partner in research and development and demonstration to help advance the technology and the grid readiness of the electric vehicle. We continue to see significant growth in that market, and we want to make sure that as those stations grow, that the electric grid is ready to handle that overall increase in electricity used for that market segment. And so with that, we'll go back to my closing slide, and I'll just say, with the investments that we've made, the over $7 billion to modernize our electric system, we are really well positioned, for both known and expected regulations that are coming down the pipe to continue to operate our system in a way that provides affordable, reliable, and increasingly clean electricity to our customers, not just in North and South Carolina, but in Florida, Cincinnati, Ohio, and other places.
Air pollution, air quality is a serious concern at the Smokies. It's damaging the very resources that the Park Service is mandated to protect, all the natural resources, and concerns with public health. We've had hundreds of unhealthy days over the past 15 years, less and less and less as the air is improving. But that's pretty inconsistent with our mission to preserve and protect those resources unimpaired for future generations. And so public health is number one. We talked about what drives a lot of this is to protect public health with air quality standards. We also want to protect public health and welfare. That's everything else that we can enjoy and everything else that air pollution can affect. Clean Air Act, that's its foundation, but in 1977, the act was amended and it established Class 1 areas. There's about 156 of them. Class 1 area they're big national parks. There's 48 of them. Smokies is one of them. Forest Service wilderness areas. We have 3 of them here in western North Carolina: Shining Rock, Linville Gorge, Joyce Kilmer Slick Rock. There's some refuges, Swan Quarter on the other side of the state. Our Class 1 areas, they should be the cleanest areas in the country. It comes with responsibilities and requirements under that designation under the Clean Air Act. We're to work with the states and local partners to make sure that good decisions are made to err on the side of protecting those resources. Air quality is better, and it's better because of emission reductions. Air quality will always be defined in this area by primarily a couple of things. Emissions, how much stuff is coming out of smokestacks, power plants, tailpipes, area sources, but weather, that's another key factor. Talk about natural factors that we enjoy. I mean, it's part of what makes the Smokies, these mountains, the mountains. We have a lot of sunlight, a lot of heat, a lot of chemical activity with the sunlight on those emissions. Those turn into secondary pollutants that are a lot of what we're talking about today. It's not necessarily the emissions that cause the direct impact to people or resources. It's those secondary pollutants. Have a lot of air stagnation in the summer months. Topography, mountains, high elevation ridges can trap and actually attract upsloping flow to make higher elevations even worse than in the valley on some days. We have a lot of biogenic emissions. When we talked about ozone, the driver is nitrogen oxide emissions. That's the limiting factor. Less NOx, less nitrogen emissions, less ozone, and we're seeing that. We have a lot of biogenic emissions that react with that, and it predisposes all those resources. So ozone in the Smokies, Purchase Knob was one of the sites reported. We're down about 36% in terms of the design value. The calculation, this 3-year average, 4th worst day, do you meet the standard or not? Down 36%. That's huge for ozone. Particulate matter, we're down about 46%. The Smokies, part of the park, on the Tennessee side is designated non-attainment for both of the particulate standards and designated non-attainment for the ozone standard. Yet we're measuring attainment on all fronts. EPA and the state of Tennessee is in the process of working through that redesignation process. I bet sometime this summer the park will be redesignated to attainment to maintain that 2008 standard. And we'll celebrate that. We were designated non-attainment back in 1997. Seems like yesterday, but that's, what is that, 17, 18 years ago. The park, most of the park has been in non-attainment, tied to the Knoxville non-attainment area. That may be short-lived because we got another standard coming October 1st, and who knows what that's going to be, 65 to 70. We talked about what that could mean. Some sites meet it, some don't, depends on what the level is. So we may have to face that next round of, well, what do we do? Where do we get emission reductions? Is it from the utilities? Probably not. Is it from motor vehicles? It may be. How do we do that? Part of that ozone standard, though, is to protect public health and welfare. And EPA has looked at the standard and proposed a secondary standard that is to protect our forests and from growth effects, visible damage, ecosystem changes. Our forest is different right now because of ozone. Some plants are more sensitive than others, and they grow less, and they can be overtaken by other systems. Cove hardwood forest. We've looked at that. We've commented on it. EPA wants to use the same form of the health standard for people to protect forests. We think that's not quite the best metric, but if they're going to go with that, make sure it's at a level to protect both people and forests. And so that's somewhere below 70 parts per billion, more like 65 or 60. So we'll see where, it'd be nice to knock that out where we protect public health and truly welfare. We haven't. There's other issues. All these pollutants, nitrogen and sulfur, nitrogen drives ozone, but those two pollutants, those two emissions create other issues. Haze has been mentioned. Visibility is the number one reason people come to the mountains in the Smokies. They do lots of things, but they want to see those mountains. They want to view scenery. Visibility over the past 15 years has improved 130% on those haziest days, those summer days that we have. Our best days are getting better, but our worst days are getting better than anywhere else in the country because we're downwind of the benefits of Duke and Progress and TVA emission reductions. TVA has similar emission reductions. The four eastern power plants closest to us have reduced 95% for both sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Same kind of plot. Your Asheville plant was, I think, a total of 22,000 tons from what it was to what it is now. It's about a 22,000 ton reduction. TVA's reduction west of us, west of western North Carolina and the Smokies, is like 350,000 tons, so 16 times greater. Those tons are gone. They're reduced, and no wonder air quality is getting better. Acid rain was mentioned. Sulfur, nitrogen, same stuff, deposits. On days like today, we have sulfur and nitrogen depositing across the landscape due to particles, which causes the haze, but it also gets in the soils. If it rains tonight or Thursday, same stuff's going to fall out of the sky. On the Tennessee side of the park, we have 12 streams that are violating the Clean Water Act due to low pH. They're impaired, considered 303D. It's non-attainment for water, and it's due to atmospheric acid rain. So we're putting together critical load modeling to understand, well, how much does it take? How much more reduction of sulfur and nitrogen does it take to restore those streams? And we'll have those answers this year. So that's good. I guess other deposition issue, mercury is a big concern. Toxics were mentioned. Mercury is another toxic that's emitted into the air from burning of coal and other sources. We have high deposition of mercury. Mercury is like lead. It's a accumulating metal in living tissue. It can harm our brains and our liver and our reproduction function. We don't want mercury in our system. The mercury air toxics rule is designed to reduce that, and I think we're seeing emission reductions in mercury, yet mercury deposition at the park is increasing, and we want to figure out why. Mercury is getting into the park, getting into the mountains, converting to that harmful form of mercury and showing up in many bird species, salamander species, terrestrial organisms that are finding methyl mercury, that harmful form, in their food, aquatic insects, spiders. And so we want to pay attention to that. So prognosis is good. Air quality is better on almost all fronts. Mercury's going up. Some forms of nitrogen are going up. NOx emissions and nitrate is going down, but that's contributing to the nitrogen deposition in our high elevation soils. Standards are going to probably tighten maybe this year. I could put this area back into non-attainment. We've got a couple of years, though, even if EPA comes out October and says it's 60, we still have a couple of years before they come back and draw a new map that says Asheville's non-attainment. So it may be a heads up that this could be, but if you look at the emission reduction projections from this area, the Knoxville area, NOx emissions from motor vehicles are going to continue to go down in this decade, and I would bet air quality will continue to improve. So that's a good sign. Good news. Stay tuned. That's where monitoring is pretty key to all this. And without that, it's tough to make decisions. But thank you for giving me the time and for having this forum. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about efforts in the region to reduce emissions from motor vehicles. It's been going on for some time, and it was about 20 years ago that Jim Renfro with the Smokies and Bill Jackson with the U.S. Forest Service sounded the alarm here in this area that we've got some air quality issues that we need to know more about. The public needs to know about them, and we need to know what can be done to address them. And so in 1998, we all partnered together to form the Regional Clean Air Campaign and start getting information out to the public and decision makers about air quality issues. And that led us into working on emission control programs from motor vehicles. And so I wanted to just highlight some of the things that are going on in this area. And also with us here today with our Clean Vehicles Coalition is Chris Dobbins. He's our fleet advisor, former fleet manager with the city of Asheville with a lot of experience with alternative fuels, advanced technology vehicles, and joined our team several years ago. So we started out late 90s, early 2000s doing clean air car fairs at the Asheville Civic Center and in Hendersonville, highlighting the fuel efficient gas and diesel vehicles and also the gas electric hybrids that had just started coming out, like the Toyota Prius and the Honda Civic. And that got us into showcasing these vehicles. And then around 2004, the head of the state energy office in Raleigh contacted Land of Sky Regional Council and asked us if we would be interested in getting involved in a federal program called Clean Cities that had been established to reduce petroleum use in this country to help us get off foreign oil and reduce emissions. And so we were interested. The Charlotte region and the Triangle, Raleigh-Durham area had already joined this program, and we were interested in becoming the third. So in 2004, we formed the Land of Sky Clean Vehicles Coalition, which made up of fleet managers, air quality officials, really anybody interested in learning more about alternative fuels, advanced technology vehicles, and other ways to reduce petroleum use and improve our emissions. And so we formed that coalition and started working towards getting the Asheville metropolitan area designated by the Department of Energy as a Clean Cities Coalition. And you can just see kind of our organizational chart there. We have several committees that are working on education and outreach and electric vehicles and other initiatives. So after about 8 years of working towards this designation, we received that designation in July of 2012 from the Department of Energy. At that time, we became the 85th Department of Energy designated Clean Cities Coalition in the country. Since then, the Tampa Bay area has joined to become the 86th, and we help them with their process since we had just gone through it all. So it's a little bit difficult to see the map there, but you can kind of see the dots there just representing the location of these coalitions all the way from the Seattle area all the way down to Miami, Florida, up to New York and Maine and Southern California, and even Hawaii has a designated coalition, and everybody wants to take that job, of course. So why would we want to join this program? The U.S. Department of Energy, once you become designated, you receive some financial support to support your efforts locally, but also the networking between ourselves and all these other coalitions around the country. Every coalition has a Clean Cities coordinator, and we share lots of information and strategies and how to overcome barriers. But we also get a lot of technical information, some of the best technical information that's available from the Department of Energy and its various labs like Oak Ridge and National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado. So they can answer any question that we have about these fuels and technologies. And also the Department of Energy Clean Cities program will make grants available for special projects, and we've tapped into several of those over the years. So the Clean Cities program promotes the use of the traditional alternative fuels, which are biodiesel, electric vehicles, natural gas, propane, E85 ethanol, it's 85% ethanol, 15% gas, and then hydrogen. And the first four that you see there in blue are the four that the folks here in our area have had the most interest in and that we've done the most work in. There's very little work being done with hydrogen. There are hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in place, especially out in California. They're very expensive, so they're not really affordable to the general public or even to local fleets, so we're not spending much time on that, but they are available, and they will be coming at some point in the future. Several years ago, the Department of Energy realized that they were not going to get off foreign oil soon enough, meet their petroleum reduction goals quick enough by just focusing on the promotion of these alternative fuels, that they needed to expand the portfolio of the Clean Cities program to include other measures. So they added things like idle reduction programs, promotion of fuel-efficient vehicles, just regular gas and diesel vehicles that are very fuel-efficient. And VMT, vehicle miles traveled reduction programs, carpooling, walking, biking, 4-day work weeks, things of that nature, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So that kind of expanded the portfolio of the program, and these are all things that we promote through our program. So why would we want to use these fuels and technologies? Fuel economy. Some of these fuels, like propane, natural gas, electric, the fuel is much cheaper than gas and diesel. Others are about the price of gas or diesel, but there are some potential fuel savings. But the big one is energy security. We're trying to get off of foreign sources of oil, especially from countries that don't see eye to eye with United States policy and programs. We're not too concerned about the oil coming from Mexico or Canada, but from some other countries, we would really like to reduce that dependence. And of course, fewer emissions. The good news is that current gas and diesel vehicles are much cleaner now than they were 10, 15 years ago. So the difference in the emissions between new vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles, the emissions benefit's not as good now as it used to be, but there is still emission benefits, especially greenhouse gas reductions. So there are still emission benefits by switching to these fuels and technologies. So some of the things that we do through our Clean Vehicles Coalition, we do a lot of education and outreach, events like this, our clean car fairs. We will be having a showcase of these vehicles at the Mother Earth News Fair here in Asheville, April 11th and 12th at the Ag Center, and do a lot of other community events, a lot of presentations. We conduct fleet assessments. We meet with fleet managers and others that are considering purchasing vehicles, look at their fleets, and see what's a good fit for different parts of their fleet. Biodiesel might be a good fit for some of their diesel vehicles, maybe natural gas for their refuse vehicles, maybe electric vehicles or hybrids for their administrative vehicles, for example. So Chris in particular helps them through that assessment and gives them recommendations. And then once they decide what they want to pursue, then we give them any other additional assistance and help them find grants, which is the last item there that we're popular for, helping entities find state and federal grant sources to implement their projects. And to date, over $13 million we've helped secure working with our various stakeholders. And we also help businesses that are in this industry hook up with those fleet managers and make projects a reality. So how are we doing as a 5-county area or coalition? This just shows the last 6 years. Each year we do an inventory or survey of all the fleets in the area that are using these fuels and technologies, and we prepare an annual report for the previous calendar year. And we just, Chris takes the lead on this, just finished the inventory or survey for 2014 calendar year. And you can see there the increase in the gas gallon equivalents that have been reduced through the work of all of our various stakeholders. There was very little, actually, this doesn't even go back as far as 2004 when we started. There was very little use of alternative fuels in this area, but it has really increased significantly. And not only alternative fuels, but idle reduction programs and other programs that are helping us to reduce our petroleum dependence. And so we're almost reaching 1 million gallons per year in displacement. And this is a graph showing the greenhouse gas reductions over that same time period. So you can see the increase there as well. So here are some things that everyone can do to reduce their emissions and reduce their petroleum use. You don't have to buy an alternative fuel vehicle or advanced technology vehicle. There are a lot of things that you can do. We've talked about them before: walking, biking, riding transit. We've got a good transit system here in Asheville and some of our other counties. Live close to work and school. Make that decision to live as close as possible. Telecommuting, working at home, which is becoming very popular with professionals. Carpooling. I carpooled with a lady from Waynesville, where I live, for about 5 years, and it was very enjoyable. Combining errands, we talked about that also. Green driving or eco driving, how you drive your vehicle will have impact on your fuel consumption and your emissions. Keeping your car tuned up and purchasing fuel efficient vehicle. And the website listed there, fueleconomy.gov, is the federal government's website for getting information on vehicles. When you're considering buying a vehicle, you can put 3 or 4 different vehicles up side by side on the screen and compare emissions and cost and other factors. So it's a very, very useful tool for people to use and make a good decision. This year we especially want to focus on idle reduction, reducing idling from your vehicle. It is expensive. I think idling a vehicle, a car, is about a half a gallon per hour. And so there's a cost involved in that. With tractor trailers, which has been a focus of idle reduction programs, they're burning about a gallon an hour of diesel. So there's been a big effort to put in truck stop electrification systems and other systems on tractor trailers to reduce their idling, and a lot of progress is being made there. Obviously, idling is polluting the environment. I actually was behind a pickup truck yesterday that had the big exhaust pipes on the back of the truck that stick up, about 10 feet, and he's really proud of his emissions, I guess. But I wish I could have gotten a photograph of that. But and we've talked a lot about emissions and their effects on health. So what you can do, you can turn your vehicle off. So if you're going to be in your vehicle idling for more than 10 seconds, it is cost effective to go ahead and cut it off, as long as you're not in traffic. But if you're at a drive-through or picking up your kid or whatever, you can cut it off and it'll be cost effective. So I want to talk just a few minutes about some of the different alternative fuels. I'm just going to hit a few highlights. We don't have time to go into a lot of detail today. But the benefit of biodiesel is that it can be used in any diesel vehicle or pieces of equipment without any modifications. You don't have to pay for a conversion to the vehicle to use federally approved biodiesel. It has to meet federal fuel quality standards. We're very fortunate to have a producer of biodiesel right here in Asheville using waste cooking grease and oils from local restaurants. I think they've got over 600 restaurants in the area that are contributing fuel to them, making biodiesel here in Asheville. They are moving their production facility down east a little ways, but I believe they're going to have a distribution facility here. But they've been a great stakeholder in our coalition. And you can see the list there of some of the entities that have been using biodiesel. MSD, the Metropolitan Sewerage District of Buncombe County, was one of the first to use it. And we've been writing up some case studies, documenting, highlighting what they're doing. And that one of those case studies is going in a national publication that the Department of Energy is about to release. So we're real proud of MSD and their commitment to reducing their emissions. City of Asheville started out using B5 when Chris was the fleet manager, kind of snuck it in there into their fuel, and it worked well, and last year they increased that up to a blend of B20, 20% biodiesel, 80% petroleum. NCDOT is using B20 statewide, and the Smokies National Park's been using that fuel as well, and one of the local construction companies that built the Sierra Nevada plant is using biodiesel as well. And Linda worked on an outreach campaign this past year and conducted a number of workshops across Western North Carolina to educate fleet managers and others, and also produce some really excellent short videos that are available online. And my photo won't work on the propane slide for some reason. But propane is the most widely used alternative fuel in the world. A lot of propane being used in vehicles in other countries, especially India. And it's gaining popularity here because of its lower price, sometimes $1 or more per gallon difference. And we've been doing a lot of outreach through these propane road shows that we've been doing at the Biltmore State and other locations the last few years. And folks that have come to those propane road shows, fleet managers, have learned about the benefits and actually implemented projects to convert their vehicles, so we're real pleased with that. Mountain Mobility was really the first entity in our area to really take the lead. That's our community transportation system here in Buncombe County. I think they've got about 40 or 50 cutaways and vans in their fleet, and they converted 10 of their vans to propane a number of years ago using some state funds, and won a Clean Air Excellence Award from Ashley's organization for that project. Buncombe County Sheriff's Office also converted some of their Ford Crown Victorias to propane several years ago with some federal money as well. And the Biltmore State is gradually converting their shuttles and other vehicles. Haywood Public Transit in my home county converting. And the Blossman Gas Company, located with their headquarters here in Asheville, has built a research and technology center here on Sweeten Creek Road that is speeding up the process for getting EPA certifications for their converted vehicles. And also put in a public access fueling station at that location on Sweeten Creek. Compressed natural gas, another really popular alternative fuel because of the lower price, similar price to propane, $1 to $2 a gallon, at least a year or two ago before gas prices dropped, but it's still even cheaper today. Photograph of the City of Asheville natural gas fueling station that Chris built when he was fleet manager. That was a first in our region. Since then, Alltech Eco, a private company here in town, has opened one on Hendersonville Road. Henderson County, Rachel's organization, has opened one in Hendersonville that both the city and the county are using in their fleets. And PSNC Energy has opened one over near the old Biltmore Square Mall, and also put one in the Mills River community just recently. And we're talking with some companies that are interested in putting in a fast fill station for tractor trailers. There's an effort nationwide to put in fueling for tractor trailers because of the lower cost. A lot of companies looking to convert, and so hopefully we'll have that other station here in the Asheville Buncombe area, Henderson County area soon. We had a Carolina Blue Skies grant project several years ago. $12 million from the Department of Energy was secured by us and our partners. And about 1.3 million of that 12 million came to this area for 4 natural gas projects. Through those projects, we deployed 37 natural gas vehicles with the city of Asheville, Hendersonville, Henderson County, and Mission Hospital, with Asheville getting, I think, about 25 of those, Chris, I believe, 27. And also the filling station that you see here that Chris built needed some expansion, some upgrades, so some funds were used for that. And also the Henderson County station was upgraded with its storage capacity through those funds. So we were very fortunate to get some of those stimulus funds in our region to advance our efforts. So several years ago, we heard about the rollout of these high-speed electric vehicles. We had been promoting electric vehicles, but these little low-speed vehicles that college campuses were using and other folks. But these high-speed electric vehicles like the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Volt were being released. And so the whole world was really getting ready for the release of these vehicles and trying to get their communities ready for these vehicles and to put in charging stations to make it easier for folks to make the decision to purchase these vehicles. So really, when we're talking about high-speed electric vehicles, we're talking about 2 different basic technologies. Over on the right, all electric vehicles, known as battery electric vehicles. They're all electric, no tailpipe emissions at all. There is no gas tank, there is no gas motor. It's all electric motor, battery system. And the best example of that is the Nissan Leaf, currently with a range of about 84 miles. However, Nissan has released information saying that within about 2 years, that range will double to 160 plus. So that will really make these vehicles more attractive. The Tesla company has a vehicle that gets over, 200 miles range currently. And those are really super vehicles as well. You can see the cost there, base price about $29,000, but there's a $7,500 federal tax credit that you can take, bringing that price way down. The other technology is what we call plug-in hybrid electrics. They are just like the Toyota Prius gas electric hybrid, only they have a bigger battery system and plug-in capability, where you can actually plug it in and utilize more electric power than you can with a regular gas electric hybrid. So these vehicles get anywhere from about 13 to 38 miles on all electric. And the best example of that is the Chevy Volt. Gets about 38 miles on all electric, and then when that's exhausted, then the car converts to a gas electric hybrid, and you still get great fuel economy and additional range. So if anyone has any issue with range of these vehicles, if you buy a plug-in hybrid that still utilizes gasoline, you're going to have the same range that you would, or even more than a conventional vehicle. So that's a good way, if you have a concern about that, is to purchase a plug-in electric. The Chevy Volt, a little bit more expensive, but again, eligible for the $7,500 tax credit. Ford Motor Company's come out with a whole line of plug-in hybrids and all electrics, BMW and several other companies, and many more are coming. Really, the only way that we're going to meet the new fuel economy standards, which are very aggressive, is through electric drive transportation. So you're seeing a lot of gas electric hybrids now being available. They're not even a novelty anymore. And you're going to see a lot more of the plug-in hybrids and battery electrics. So we've been working through our electric vehicles committee for a couple of years to develop plans for putting in charging stations, doing education and outreach, to drive the market towards electric drive vehicles, and doing a lot of work and securing some state and federal grant sources to put in charging stations. And so to date, we've got about, this is the middle of 2014 Division of Motor Vehicles data. We had about 200 electric vehicles registered in the Asheville region, 5-county area, and about 3,400 in North Carolina. It's been almost a year, so we probably got quite a few more. We should be getting updated data soon. Lower right, this is the Asheville, City of Asheville Police Department Chevy Volt that they purchased several years ago, that charges at their solar integrated charging station on Charlotte Street. So the vehicles are coming, so those numbers are fairly low compared to the total number of vehicles, but the increase in the percentage of electric drive vehicles is really going up. Actually, I'm hearing that the adoption of plug-in electrics is even faster rate than the gas electric hybrids when they first came out. And this area has been a leader in terms of the adoption of these technologies, so we're proud of that. So we've done a lot of work into putting in charging stations, working with lots of different partners over here on the right-hand side, especially Brightfield Transportation Solutions, a small company here in Asheville that specializes in solar integrated charging stations. But with many other entities, including the City of Hendersonville, have installed stations with some grant support. So to date, we've got about 80 public access or workplace charging stations or cords in the 5-county area at 36 different locations, and that was as of last month. And growing rapidly. It's even hard now to keep track of how many of these stations are going in. It's a very good news. Grocery stores are starting to put them in on their own, and other companies that see the benefit of that. So we'll be working with some other entities, especially in Transylvania County where we don't have any stations. Up in Madison County, we don't have any. Over in Haywood, where we just have a few, we'll be working in those other counties to build out that network. And that's it. Any questions? Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I especially want to thank our sponsors and all our presenters. Great job. And again, special thanks to the media for coming out, and especially Buncombe County TV. And thanks for coming out, and just remember that working together, we can clear the air. Thank you.